She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm going to need you to step aside, sir. We don't process transactions of this size without proper verification." 12 people stood behind me in line. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Not one of those 12 people, not the teller, not the branch manager who appeared from his glass office minutes later, knew that my signature was on the founding documents of the building they were standing in, that I owned 68% of Meridian National Bank, every brick, every terminal, every name tag pinned to every chest. But it didn't start there. It never does. I grew up watching my father iron his shirts on Sunday nights. Collar first, then the shoulders, then down the front placket with slow, deliberate strokes. He worked at a steel distribution company for 31 years. Always the first to arrive, always the last to leave. And he never once made senior management. He knew why. He never said it out loud, but we both knew. I was 8 years old the first time I understood what that silence meant. By the time I was 34, I had built a portfolio that most people would need 3 lifetimes to assemble. Not through inheritance, my father left me a watch and a chest of ironed shirts, but through 15 years of calculated risk and the specific kind of hunger that comes from watching someone you love be quietly erased. I had a stake in 11 companies across 4 industries. Meridian National Bank was the largest. I had spent 4 years acquiring shares quietly, methodically, until I held 68% of outstanding stock. The board knew. The CEO knew. The regulators knew. The branch tellers did not. That was intentional. I had never needed them to know. Until the morning of March the 14th. The drive was unremarkable. A Tuesday, cold enough that the car hadn't warmed up by the time I pulled into the lot. I had a wire transfer to authorize in person, procedural requirement for transactions above a certain threshold, scheduled between 2 calls. Gray jacket, dark jeans, clean sneakers. I walked through the glass doors at 9:47, took a numbered ticket and stood in line behind a woman in a yellow coat depositing what looked like a jar of rolled coins. 4 windows, 2 staffed. The teller at window 3 had a nameplate that read, Donna. Blonde hair pulled tight, a small flag pin on her lapel. She was counting bills with the focused expression of someone performing a task that had long ago stopped requiring thought. When the woman in the yellow coat moved away, I stepped forward. I slid my ID across the counter and explained what I needed. An in-person authorization for a wire transfer, account ending in 7741, to a holding company in Delaware. Standard procedure. I had done it twice at this same branch, both times without incident. Donna looked at my ID. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at the ID again. And something shifted in her expression. Small, practiced, like a door being locked from the inside. "I'm going to need you to step aside, sir," she said. Her voice was carefully pleasant, the kind of pleasant that takes effort to maintain. "We don't process transactions of this size without proper verification. You'll need to wait for a manager." "That's fine," I said. "The account is verified. I've done this here before." "Sir." She said the word with a particular weight I recognized immediately. Not aggressive, nothing documentable, just heavy, like a hand on a shoulder that is not quite a push, but is not quite not one. "There are other customers waiting." I stepped to the side. Behind me, the next person moved forward without hesitation. I watched their transaction complete in under 2 minutes. Donna smiled at them as they left. I noted the clock above the frosted glass panel. 9:51. The branch manager appeared 8 minutes later. Nameplate, Brett. Maybe 30, clean-shaved, with a firm handshake and the kind of deliberate eye contact that corporate training programs produce. "Mr. Washington," he said, glancing at my ID, "how can I help you today?" I explained again. "Wire transfer, account 7741, authorization." Brett nodded with the measured rhythm of a man buying himself time. "Right. So for transactions of this size, we do have a verification protocol. And I'm seeing that this account has there are certain flags." "What flags?" I asked. He looked at the screen, then back at me. "I'm not able to share the specific details, but that account," I said, keeping my voice even, "has been active here for 4 years. It has never been flagged. I've completed 2 identical transactions at this branch. If there's a flag, I'd like to see it documented." Brett's jaw tightened slightly. He turned the monitor a fraction, then caught himself. "I understand your frustration, but I'm going to have to ask you to return with additional documentation. A passport, perhaps." "I have my state-issued photo ID," I said, "which is the required documentation for this transaction, as specified in your institution's own operating procedures. Section 4, subsection B. You can pull it up." The silence lasted 4 seconds. Brett straightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm going to need to make a phone call," he said. "Please do," I said. He disappeared into his glass-walled office. Through the partition, I could see him on the phone, one hand moving, face animated. A man explaining a problem he assumed was routine. Donna continued processing customers, glancing over every 30 seconds with the quiet satisfaction of someone who has followed procedure correctly and is waiting for the system to confirm it. I took out my phone. The first text went to Patricia Hines, my attorney. 4 words. "Meridian, Branch 7. Now." Her reply came in 90 seconds. The second text went to Raymond Okafor, my chief of staff, who knew every account, every percentage, every board vote. His reply, "On my way. ETA 18 minutes." I found the bench near the entrance and sat down. The lights hummed. On the wall across from me, a framed photograph. Meridian National Bank headquarters in Charlotte. Glass tower, 16 floors, clean sky. At the base, in clean sans serif type, "Building communities. Building trust." I thought about my father. The deliberate iron moving down the placket of a shirt he would wear to a job that would never fully see him. The 31 years of silence that knew its own weight. Brett came back out 15 minutes later with a different face. The careful authority was gone, replaced by the look of a man who has received information he was not expecting. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Washington, I've spoken with—" "I'd like to continue waiting," I said pleasantly. "My associates are on their way. I find these things go more smoothly with documentation present." He stopped. "I'm sorry." "I have time," I said, and smiled at him, cordial, opaque. "I'm comfortable here." Brett stood a moment in the stillness of a man who has lost his script. Then he nodded once and returned to his office, where I watched him pick up the phone a second time. Raymond arrived 17 minutes after my text. Leather portfolio, deliberate walk, dark suit. He sat beside me without a word. I gave him a brief account. He listened, opened the portfolio, checked 2 documents, closed it. "Ready?" he said quietly. "Almost," I said. 2 more minutes. He gave me the patient look of a man who has learned my timings are never arbitrary. The printer across the branch ran a long job that sounded like distant rain. Donna worked her window. The motivational slogans on the frosted panels caught the light. 2 minutes later, I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked toward Brett's office. I knocked twice on the glass. When he looked up, I held his gaze without blinking. "I think," I said, "it's time we had a different conversation. One where all the relevant facts are on the table." Brett looked up from his desk with the expression of a man who was hoping the problem had resolved itself in his absence. I opened the door and stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Raymond followed, closing it with a soft, deliberate click that somehow carried more weight than a slam. "Mr. Washington, I want to assure you that our protocols exist to protect all customers." "Raymond," I said. Raymond placed a single document on Brett's desk. A shareholder summary. My name at the top. The percentage, 68.4, in clean black type. Brett looked at the document, then at me, then at the document again, and I watched the color drain from his face the way water leaves a glass. Steadily, completely, without drama. "This is," he started and stopped. "A certified record of my ownership stake in Meridian National Bank," I said, in the tone I use in board meetings when someone has said something imprecise, and I am giving them the chance to correct it. "Which makes me the majority shareholder of the institution in which your employee asked me to step aside during a routine wire transfer. A transaction I have completed at this branch twice before. Same ID, same account, same form." The silence in that office had a different quality than the one outside. The branch clicked and hummed beyond the glass. In here, the air had gone entirely still. "We weren't aware," Brett began. "No," I said. "You weren't. And I'm not here to discuss awareness. I'm here to complete a wire transfer." He processed the authorization in 4 minutes. His hands were not entirely steady as he typed. When the confirmation printed, he handed it to me with both hands. The way people hand things when they suddenly understand the true dimensions of the room they're standing in. I folded the receipt, put it in my jacket pocket, and looked at him for a moment with the specific attention of someone who is making a record. "I'll be in touch with your regional director. Have a good morning." Outside the office, Donna was at her window. I walked past without slowing. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. Raymond held the door, and we stepped into the cold morning air. "That's it?" he said. "No," I said. "That's the beginning." Patricia had been in the parking lot for 6 minutes. I called her from the car. "Tell me," she said before I could speak. I told her everything. 2 seconds of silence, which with Patricia meant she was already 3 steps ahead. "A branch manager was called," she said. "He held you for over 30 minutes on a transaction that took 4 minutes to process. His first move was not to apologize, but to ask for a passport. This isn't a bad morning. This is a pattern." "I know what it was," I said. "Then you know what I'm going to file." I spent the afternoon writing the account she asked for. Exact times, exact words. Names, durations. The customers processed without delay, while I sat on the bench with a numbered ticket in my pocket. I sent it at 4:47. She replied at 5:12. "Filing tomorrow." This is solid. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water I wasn't drinking and thought about my father. The Sunday night ritual. The shirt collar pressed smooth. The 31 years of arriving first and leaving last and never making senior management and never saying why. He filed it somewhere deep. The same place I had filed it at 8 years old. The difference was what we each did with it afterward. I went to bed at midnight. I was awake by 2. I lay in the dark and ran through the sequence of the morning the way you probe a bruise. Not because you want to, but because you have to confirm it's real. By 3, I'd given up on sleep. I made coffee, sat by the window, and let the city breathe at its slowest hour. By 5, the decision was made. Not just the complaint, something with more structure to it. Patricia filed with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency the next morning. She also sent certified letters to the regional director, the chief compliance officer, and, at my specific request, to CEO Gerald Marsh, a man I had sat beside through 14 board meetings, who had twice described me to others as our major investor, with a warmth entirely contingent on my remaining invisible. Gerald called at 11:17. "Marcus," he said, managing his tone carefully, "I want to start by saying how deeply—" "Gerald," I said, "I've already filed with the OCC. What I need from you today: a written account of your branch verification protocols and the documented basis on which staff may deviate from standard ID requirements. End of business." A pause. "Of course. And I'd like to schedule a full board review of branch-level compliance training, next available date." He agreed to everything. When someone owns 68% of an institution, agreement is the path of least resistance. What Gerald was still processing as he hung up was that I had spent 4 years as the kind of majority shareholder who made no noise and asked for nothing beyond returns. That era had ended at 9:51 on a Tuesday morning in Branch 7. The OCC investigation opened within 2 weeks. Patricia had the security footage subpoenaed. It showed, in time-stamped detail, every customer processed before and after me, the full duration of my wait, and Brett's second phone call, which went to the regional director, who told him to complete the transaction and did not tell him to apologize. The regional director was placed on administrative leave. Brett was transferred to a back-office role. Donna was let go. Not for the initial request, which supervisors spent considerable effort calling procedural, but for what the footage documented across the 18 minutes I sat on that bench. 2 board members asked if I intended to sell my stake. I told them I had no plans to sell anything. What I announced at the next board meeting, in the same 14th floor conference room where I had once been asked my opinion as an afterthought, was a full audit of service data across all 47 branches. Approval rates, processing times, escalation patterns, disaggregated by the race of the customer. The motion passed. The room was quiet as the votes came in. Gerald Marsh resigned 6 weeks later. Personal reasons. By June, I had hired Asha Pemberton as compliance director. 8 years at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The energy of someone who has been waiting for permission to look at something clearly. Her preliminary findings in July were not surprising to me. They were surprising to several others in the room. The work that followed was slow and unglamorous and necessary, the way the real kind always is. On a Thursday in September, I drove past Branch 7. I didn't stop. I looked at the glass doors, the marble lobby, the frosted panels, the photograph of the Charlotte Tower behind them. I kept driving. That evening, I called my mother. 40 minutes. Her garden, a cousin's new baby, a film. At the end, she said, almost as an afterthought, "Your father would have liked knowing about the bank." "I know," I said. He used to say the problem with patience is that people mistake it for acceptance. I sat with that. Outside the window, the Atlanta skyline held its shape against the dark. On the shelf above my desk, my father's watch sat where it has sat since the day I unpacked it. Crystal scratched, second hand still moving. I looked at it for a long time. Then I went to bed, and I slept without difficulty. And in the morning, the light came through clean and uncomplicated, and I let it be exactly that.